organizations that fight for American civil rights, none is more powerful, none is more essential than the American Civil Liberties Union and its New York affiliate, the NYCLU. We're really honored to be joined today by Policy Director for the New York Civil Liberties Union, Lee Bolin.
Thank you so much, Albert. I'm Lee with the New York Civil Liberties Union, and we are proud, defiant, insistent on joining the Stop Surveillance Summer. We're about 30 years overdue with getting our public policy to catch up to developments in technology, in policing, in invading our privacy. Privacy is a civil rights issue, it's a civil liberties issue, it's a racial justice issue, and it's an economic justice issue. The very same communities where they get surveillance systems in their schools instead of social services or counselors, where they're going to get metal detectors in their subways instead of needed repairs and access for people who are disabled. Those are the same communities where we see abusive policing, stacked surveillance equipment, and the depredation of our communities in the name of public safety, which is anything but. We are one of the most surveilled cities in the country, in the world. We have units of the NYPD that look like an occupying army, dripping with military overflow gear, drones in the sky over protests, surveillance in our subways and in our schools. If surveillance kept us safe, there would be no crime in New York. And we know it does not. It is surveillance theater, and it is designed to make us know that the government is watching. Because our liberty is foundational to all of our other rights. And surveillance, invasions of our privacy take away our liberty, bit by bit by bit, and not everyone's liberty equally. Black and brown communities, communities without services that have been depredated, and instead of services, we get a budget bloated with cops and surveillance that take our taxes, take our money, and instead of community safety, instead of public safety, our government has fallen down on the job of protecting our liberty. Now is a pretty obvious time about why our privacy is so foundational. As hostile governments, hostile states in the United States seek to demonize and criminalize women and people who need abortion, how are they going to do it? They're going to look online for people who search for example, an abortion care, a medical center, right? As people criminalize and demonize our trans and non-binary community members, how are they going to do it? They're going to invade kids' privacy by looking at your hormones to decide if you can play sports. Privacy is the backstop to government taking our autonomy, our liberty. All of that power comes from our protecting our autonomy. And Albany failed us this year because they had options on the table. There was a ban on reverse warrants. There was legislation that would ban the kind of reverse warrants that will let the government get your search terms online, whether you're looking for gender-affirming care or where you can get an abortion. Albany didn't pass it. There was a ban on drones flying overhead, surveilling our protests, our First Amendment civil liberties. They didn't pass that. We need bans on facial recognition of flawed and biased and racist technology that's like our modern digital snake oil, and instead, Albany passed a law requiring metal detectors in our subways. And now it's time for New York City's budget season, and whether crime goes up or crime goes down, we're going to hear the same thing from a lot of those politicians. We want more. We want more cops, we want more surveillance, we want more toys, and we want more tech. And we are here to say enough. Our politicians have failed us on privacy. We are 40 years overdue for meaningful data protections, limits on facial recognition and other creepy tech that undermines our liberty and does nothing to keep us safe and is racist. We need reverse warrant bans. We need to ban metal detectors in our schools and our subways. And instead of living like we can prevent crime or be safe by living in a supermax facility in our public spaces, we want investment in our communities. We want social services. We want violence interruption. We want meaningful gun policy. And we want to stop hitting our head against the wall and doing the same thing, which is funding cops, funding tech, until we live in an occupying army with no more safety than we had before and a hell of a lot less liberty. So we join the advocates behind us, the people in New York, stop and say, that's enough, not in our name. It's time to stop the surveillance economy. We want counselors instead of cops in our schools and in our communities. We want services, not surveillance. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. And just to repeat, we are deeply disappointed that Albany failed to protect New Yorkers, including the pregnant people who will be coming to New York for safe care, from geofence warrants, from reverse search warrants, from keyword data. These are steps that New York can take. These are steps that New York must take, and we shouldn't wait until we see even more people suffering to act. Next, we're going to be hearing from an amazing young activist and advocate, Nina Overdeck, who's at Latina Justice PRLDEF. Nina.
Thank you, Albert, and thank you, STOP. Thank you, allies and advocates and council members and assembly members. Latino Justice is proud to stand alongside all of you to demand an end to this unsafe, unjustified, suspicionless surveillance. New surveillance technologies used to spy on New Yorkers without any basis for suspicion of a crime violate the privacy of everybody, every neighbor, every New Yorker. In addition, they have also been used time and time again to disproportionately surveil, harass, and stigmatize people of color and people from disadvantaged groups, Muslim Americans, Black and Latinx people, immigrants, and LGBTQ+ New Yorkers. Youth of color are also particularly vulnerable to this surveillance and harassment in the digital age. As other speakers today have highlighted, it's playing soccer while brown that subjects you to unfair, harmful, unjustified suspicion. It's walking while black. It's speaking Spanish to a loved one from a prison phone. It's daily practices of the Islamic faith. It's expressing neighborliness or brotherhood, or simply being a part of the social fabric of a Black or brown community. This is why Latino Justice PRLDEF opposes the use of tools and practices like reverse warrants, facial recognition technology, speech recognition technology, and social media phishing tactics. Let's stop the surveillance dragnet, let's stop the criminalization of our communities, and let's stop the suspicionless spying on our youth. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from an amazing activist who works with and on behalf of those New Yorkers most directly impacted by the surveillance state every day, particularly those targeted by anti-gang policing. Josemar Trujillo, the Policing and Social Justice Project researcher. Josemar.
Thank you, guys. Glad to stand with STOP and all of the other great organizations here. I'm here on behalf of the Policing and Social Justice Project and also the Gangs Coalition, a coalition of directly impacted members, advocates, attorneys who are against the gang database and all forms of gang policing. We're actually thankful to have a number of co-sponsors this year on a bill to actually abolish the gang database, first bill of its kind at a municipal level in the country. We don't want to reform or make better of a gang database. We want to get rid of these labels and these stigmas. We want true community safety from the ground up, not from the NYPD's point of view. I will just point out that to get on the gang database is pretty easy. Most of the major on-ramps are where you live, predominantly public housing, predominantly Black and Latino neighborhoods. Also, who you know, who you grew up with, which we know in this city. Sometimes it's just who you went down the street with, who you went to school with. So it's very easy for the NYPD to say this is a completely arbitrary, objective standard, but we know that this is going to target, and it does target, predominantly Black and low-income Latino neighborhoods. 99.5%, I think, was the percentage of people who are non-white, according to Dermot Chase's testimony 3 years ago here in the council. We also want to point out that one of the emerging trends here is the inclusion of people in the gang database based on their social media activity and what they post. These are young people, adolescents, who are posting things online, who the police then, either through fake accounts or just watching what they post, are using it to deem culpability and criminality. The last time I checked, when the former presidential candidate Andrew Yang's supporters would post Yang Gang, I don't think they were put it on a criminal conspiracy or put on any databases. Same thing goes for the Proud Boys or other parts of white supremacist organizations. Their social medias are not landing them on this gang database, which again is 99.5% Black and Latino and non-white. I want to just point out just one particular instance in Harlem. My son's middle school, a few years ago in 2015, a young man was killed by gun violence, Chico Tavares. His name was actually memorialized by people, and they say things online like Chico Gang or Chico World, not as a way to describe themselves as part of a criminal syndicate, but a way to commemorate and say this was our guy, this was somebody who we grew up with, and we want to remember his name. Come to find out, a few years later, the Manhattan District Attorney, in collaboration with NYPD, did a roundup of people that they claim were part of the Chico Gang. There's no such thing as the Chico Gang. There never has been. The NYPD doesn't only falsely put people on the gang database as individuals, but they create gangs out of thin air based off of whatever they see on social media. And this is the power that we allow the police to have, is to create and create enemies amongst us and distract us from the real community solutions that we should be doing. Not incarcerating people, not profiling people, not sitting around on their computers watching people's social media posts. Adolescents, 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds are being watched for what they're seeing online. We need actual solutions that actually bring long-lasting safety for people, and this is not it. The gang database has been in existence for numerous years, and during this time we've seen increases in crime. It doesn't work. It doesn't even work for its stated mission. So we want to not only abolish the gang database, we're very thankful for the Assembly members' bill in the state for the specific aspects of the social media spying and surveillance on young people. These are our kids. These are my kids. These are your kids. We should not be watched online by the police. Thank you.
Lastly, we will be hearing from another attorney who fights on behalf of those directly targeted by mass surveillance in New York, Julie Frye, an attorney with the Neighborhood Defender Service of Harlem. Julie.
Thank you to everyone who's here today to support this important effort. I'd like to reiterate that technology is not a panacea that solves flawed and biased policing. Technology is also flawed and biased. In Floyd versus New York, the lawsuit that challenged stop and frisk in New York, the plaintiffs talked about the daily indignity and humiliation of walking out of their house and being treated like a criminal, like a suspect, everywhere that they went. And what we have in New York City, in Harlem, in the communities that my office represents, and all over the city, is those communities being targeted, being watched constantly by a plethora of surveillance, video, social media, cell phone technology that watches every single move that everyone in our neighborhoods makes constantly. And there is a toll that takes, just like the plaintiffs in Floyd. There is a toll that takes on the people that we represent, the communities that we serve every day. When people are minding their business and hanging out with their friends and they're suddenly swarmed by a battalion of armed police because a car backfired and it triggered a shot spotter alert, or when people are caught up in a geofence net and are searched because they happen to be in the same neighborhood where something happened as are tens of thousands of other people in our densely packed city, that has a toll on our communities, regardless of how many crimes that the police can say that they solved because of it. What we're demanding is transparency, accountability from these companies that are making millions of dollars mining the private information of our communities with no accountability, no oversight to anyone in the public, in any public agency, much less the communities that are targeted by them daily. We want basic dignity, basic humanity for the people that we serve, for the people of the city, for people to recognize that the targeting of them by this surveillance technology is a violation of their fundamental rights to live free and to live with their own humanity and the right to live private lives free of being watched by the state. Thank you.
So in closing today, we've heard the same themes over and over again. That unchecked, the city continues to waste billions of dollars on technology that does not work, which puts our neighbors in harm's way, particularly our BIPOC neighbors, our Muslim neighbors, our immigrant neighbors. We don't have to accept this because we know there are bills we can pass in Albany and here at City Hall. We know there are steps the mayor can take. We know this is a problem we can fix, or it's a problem we can continue to ignore for another 30 years. Thankfully, with the amazing advocates and elected officials out here today, I'm confident that this is the summer where we are going to stop mass surveillance and begin to outlaw these terrifying and dangerous technologies. Thank you all so much.